They said it was impossible. They said the Philippines would never build it. A tunnel, under the ocean, connecting two islands that have been separated for thousands of years. But right now, as I'm talking to you, engineers are planning something so insane, so ambitious, that it makes the Channel Tunnel look like a practice run. This isn't just a tunnel. This is the Philippines betting everything on a project that could either change the country forever or become the most expensive failure in Southeast Asian history. And what I discovered about this project kept me up at night. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing on the shores of Bataan, looking across the Manila Bay toward Cavite. It's beautiful. The water sparkles under the tropical sun. Boats drift lazily across the horizon. But beneath that calm surface, beneath those gentle waves, something extraordinary is about to happen. The Philippine government wants to drill a tunnel right through the seabed. 16 kilometers of concrete and steel snaking through the ocean floor, deeper than most of us will ever go in our lifetimes. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why? Why would anyone attempt something this crazy? And that's exactly what I thought when I first heard about this. But the more I dug into this story, the more I realized this tunnel isn't just about connecting two pieces of land. It's about survival. It's about a country desperately trying to solve a problem that's choking it to death. And that problem has a name: Metro Manila traffic. Picture this. You're a regular person living in Manila. You wake up at 4 in the morning, not because you want to, but because if you don't, you'll spend 6 hours in traffic trying to get to a job that's only 20 kilometers away. 6 hours. In traffic. Every single day. The Philippines loses approximately $3 billion a year just from people sitting in cars, not moving, burning fuel, missing time with their families, slowly losing their minds in the suffocating heat. It's not just inconvenient. It's a national crisis. And this tunnel, this impossible underwater tunnel, might be the only way out. But here's where it gets interesting. The Manila Bay Crossing, as they're calling it, isn't just one tunnel. It's a hybrid system that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. Part bridge, part tunnel, part artificial island. You drive across a bridge, then suddenly descend into a tunnel that takes you under the shipping lanes where the massive cargo ships pass overhead, then emerge onto an artificial island in the middle of the bay, before diving back down into another tunnel section, and finally rising up on the other side. It's like a roller coaster, except you're in your car and you're under the ocean. Now, let me tell you something personal. When I first started researching this video, my mom looked at me and said, "You know you can't even get to 5,000 subscribers, right? Why are you making videos about tunnels?" And honestly, that hit different. Because she wasn't trying to be mean. She was being real. But here's the thing. That comment made me realize something. People always doubt what seems impossible until someone actually does it. Just like this tunnel. Just like the Philippines taking on a project that every expert said was too dangerous, too expensive, too ambitious for a developing country to pull off. So here's my call to action for you. If you're watching this and you believe that impossible things can happen, if you believe that a country can drill under an ocean, if you believe that I can prove my mom wrong, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's get to 5,000 together. Let's show that the impossible is just the possible waiting to happen. But back to this tunnel, because the story gets even wilder. The technical challenges of building this thing are absolutely mind-blowing. First, there's the water pressure. At the deepest points, this tunnel will be about 50 meters below sea level. That's the weight of an entire ocean pressing down on concrete and steel. One crack, one miscalculation, and thousands of people could be trapped in a flooding tunnel with nowhere to go. Engineers have to design a structure that can withstand not just the constant pressure, but earthquakes. Because here's something terrifying, the Philippines sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. It's one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. Earthquakes don't just happen there. They're practically scheduled. So how do you build a tunnel that can flex and move during an earthquake without cracking? How do you ensure that when the earth literally shifts beneath the ocean, your tunnel doesn't become a death trap? The answer involves something called seismic isolation joints, flexible connections that allow different sections of the tunnel to move independently during ground shaking. It's like giving the tunnel its own suspension system. But even with all this technology, there's still a risk. There's always a risk. And then there's the soil. Manila Bay isn't sitting on solid rock. It's sitting on soft marine clay and sediment that's been accumulating for thousands of years. Building on this is like trying to construct a house on pudding. The tunnel boring machines, these massive mechanical worms that will carve through the seabed, have to navigate through unpredictable ground conditions. One day they're drilling through clay. The next day they hit a layer of coral. The next day they encounter pockets of gas that could explode if ignited. Every meter forward is a gamble. But the Philippine government isn't backing down. They've partnered with Chinese state-owned companies who have experience building underwater tunnels, most notably the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge, which includes a tunnel section under the Pearl River Delta. The estimated cost? About $4 billion. $4 billion. For a country where millions of people still live in poverty, where hospitals are underfunded, where schools are overcrowded, spending $4 billion on a tunnel under the ocean seems almost obscene. And yet, the economic argument is compelling. If this tunnel can reduce travel time from Bataan to Cavite from 4 hours to less than 30 minutes, if it can open up new areas for development, if it can decongest Metro Manila even slightly, the long-term economic benefits could dwarf the initial investment. Let me tell you about Juan. Juan is a fictional character, but he represents millions of real Filipinos. Juan lives in Cavite with his family. He works in a factory in Bataan. Every day, Juan wakes up before dawn, kisses his sleeping children goodbye, and begins his commute. He takes a jeepney to the bus station, waits in line for 45 minutes, boards a bus that winds through congested roads, crosses a bridge that's perpetually jammed with traffic, and finally arrives at work 4 hours later, exhausted before his shift even begins. He does this twice a day, 5 days a week. One has watched his children grow up through video calls because by the time he gets home, they're already asleep. The tunnel would give one his life back. It would give millions of Juans their lives back. But there's another side to this story that nobody's really talking about. The environmental impact. Manila Bay is already one of the most polluted bodies of water in the world. Plastic waste, untreated sewage, industrial runoff, it all ends up in the bay. Marine life has been devastated. Fishermen who once made a living from these waters now struggle to catch anything. And now, the government wants to drill through the seabed, disturbing habitats, stirring up sediment, potentially releasing trapped pollutants back into the water column. Environmental groups are furious. They argue that before building a tunnel, maybe, just maybe, the government should focus on cleaning up the bay first. But their voices are drowned out by the promise of economic progress. There's also the question of corruption. The Philippines has a long and complicated history with large infrastructure projects. Money disappears. Contractors cut corners. Quality control becomes quality suggestion. There are legitimate fears that a project this massive, with billions of dollars flowing through multiple contractors and subcontractors, could become a feeding frenzy for corrupt officials. Every bridge that cracks prematurely, every road that crumbles after one rainy season, stands as a reminder of what happens when corruption meets construction. But let's assume for a moment that everything goes right. Let's imagine that the tunnel actually gets built, on time, on budget, to the highest safety standards. What then? What does the Philippines look like with this tunnel? The immediate effect would be transformative. Commute times would plummet. Areas in Bataan and Cavite that were previously too far from Metro Manila to be viable for businesses would suddenly become prime real estate. New cities could emerge. Job opportunities would multiply. The tunnel would essentially expand the economic zone of Metro Manila, creating a megaregion that could compete with other Southeast Asian economic powerhouses. Tourism could explode. Imagine being a tourist and getting to drive through a tunnel under the ocean. That's an experience. That's something you tell your friends about. The tunnel itself could become a destination, not just a means of transportation. And with better connectivity, tourists could more easily explore regions outside of Manila, distributing economic benefits more evenly across the country. But here's the dark side that keeps me up at night. What if it fails? What if, during construction, there's a catastrophic accident? What if the tunnel floods during a typhoon? What if an earthquake damages the structure and it has to be closed indefinitely? The Philippines would be stuck with a $4 billion failure, a monument to ambition that outpaced ability. The political fallout would be immense. Heads would roll. The government that approved this project would be remembered not for vision, but for recklessness. And even if the tunnel succeeds structurally, there's no guarantee it will solve the traffic problem. History is littered with examples of cities that built more roads, more bridges, more tunnels, only to find that traffic actually got worse. There's a phenomenon called induced demand. When you make driving easier, more people drive. When you build a tunnel that cuts commute time in half, people who previously didn't commute that route suddenly start using it. The tunnel could fill up with traffic within years of opening, and the Philippines would be right back where it started, except now with $4 billion less in the national budget. There's something almost poetic about this whole endeavor, though. The Philippines is a nation of over 7,000 islands. For centuries, water has divided communities, separated families, isolated economies. The sea is both a blessing and a barrier. And now, For the first time, the Philippines is saying, we're not going over the water, we're not going around it, we're going through it. We're going under it. There's a defiance in that, a refusal to accept limitations. It's the same spirit that drives people to climb impossible mountains, to explore space, to push boundaries just because they're there. I think about the workers who will build this tunnel, the engineers who will spend years of their lives calculating stress loads and water pressures, the construction workers who will descend into the earth, into the darkness beneath the ocean, day after day, trusting that the tunnel won't collapse on them. These are ordinary people attempting something extraordinary. And win or lose, succeed or fail, there's something deeply human about that. The project is still in the planning stages. Environmental impact assessments are ongoing. Financing deals are being negotiated. The Chinese government is interested, but so are Japanese firms, Korean companies. Everyone wants a piece of what could be the infrastructure project of the decade in Southeast Asia. There are still so many unknowns, so many variables, so many things that could go right or catastrophically wrong. But here's what I know for certain. This tunnel represents hope. For Juan and his family, for the millions trapped in traffic, for a country trying to modernize and compete in a global economy. It represents the belief that things can get better, that solutions exist, that impossible challenges can be overcome with enough determination and resources. And maybe that hope is naive. Maybe it's foolish. Maybe in 10 years we'll look back on this as a cautionary tale about hubris. Or maybe, just maybe, we'll look back and wonder how we ever lived without it. The Philippines is at a crossroads. Every decision made about this tunnel, every compromise, every risk assessment, will shape the country's future in ways we can't fully predict. And that's terrifying. But it's also thrilling. Because this is history happening in real time. This is a nation betting on itself. And I, for one, can't wait to see how this story ends. So the next time you're stuck in traffic, the next time you're frustrated by how long it takes to get somewhere, remember that somewhere in the Philippines, engineers are planning to drill under an entire ocean to solve that exact problem. And whether they succeed or fail, they're trying. They're pushing forward. They're refusing to accept that things can't get better. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Not about tunnels or traffic or infrastructure, but about the human refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds. That tunnel will go under the ocean in the Philippines. And when it does, when those first cars drive through, when people realize they just traveled beneath the sea itself, it won't just be a triumph of engineering. It'll be a reminder that the word impossible is really just a challenge waiting to be accepted. And if you've watched this far, if you've stuck with me through this entire journey, then you already know what I'm about to ask. Hit that subscribe button. Help me prove my mom wrong. Help me show that 5,000 subscribers isn't impossible. It's just the beginning. Because just like this tunnel, just like the Philippines taking on the ocean itself, we're all capable of more than people think. We're all capable of going deeper, pushing harder, and achieving what everyone said we couldn't. So let's do this together. Subscribe, drop a comment telling me what you think about this insane tunnel project, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore another impossible idea that somebody, somewhere, is actually trying to make real.